Welcome back to Go on Shaw TV. Well, this is the newly erected west wall at the site, Upper Fort Garry site here in downtown Winnipeg. And I'm joined by Michelle, who's a board member of the Upper Fort Garry. Tell us about this newly erected wall. This is exactly where the wall would have been back in the 1800s, correct?
Yes, this represents the west wall of the fort, and it's at about the same height as it was. Now, there are two parts to this fort. The first one, built in 1835, is taller, and it was built in brick. The north part, which was added 20 years later and more, is where the original gate still is now, but that was built the second part of the fort, and it's a lower wall. So this whole wall represents the original west wall of the fort.
And when people come down here to the space, they can kind of get a sense of just how big the site was, right?
It is immense. It crosses Assiniboine Avenue and goes into Assiniboine Park. It crosses Main Street and goes into the parking lot. But there's a bit of the east wall that's at one end, so you can see how wide it was and how huge it was. It's a huge surface that's been covered here.
It is a beautiful green space, and as you walk through it, there are gardens. You did tell me the name. I completely forget it. There is an architectural name that I totally forget. What is it again?
These are plinths.
Plinths. Okay, so there are plinths around. They look like gardens, and they actually represent where buildings and important sites were in Upper Fort Garry.
Yes, using the archaeological information we have, these plinths represent actual buildings that were here, whether they were pemmican stores or storage areas or office buildings. Across there is a very important building where the Legislative Assembly of Assiniboia sat. That's the original legislature here that sat in 1870. Had very important functions. This is also, of course, where Louis Riel and the Métis came in 1869 to assert their authority and to actually force Ottawa to negotiate terms of confederation. So in many ways, we value this site because it is where Manitoba was born.
It's the birthplace of Manitoba, so it's kind of mind-boggling to me that it was just torn down after Manitoba was born as a province.
Well, older structures, wood structures that weren't made to last all that long. Also, engineers like to do these things. They like to have straight roads. So when the east wall was pulled down, the city was able to build what is now Main Street in a straight line, because this wall goes right across Main Street now. So if the original fort was still here, we would be going around it. So for whatever reason, people chose. And of course, the Hudson Bay Company as a company was moving. I mean, the fur trade was over, the buffalo hunt was over. The purpose for this fort has pretty well disappeared by this time. The original vision was to celebrate the birthplace of Manitoba. And the fact that this was the site from which all of the northwest angle of the North American continent was managed from this site. The Hudson Bay territory is just absolutely immense. It goes, every river that draws into Hudson's Bay was part of the Hudson Bay concession, Rupert's Land. So it was the administrative center of an absolutely huge territory. And of course, we mustn't forget before that, it was also the center of trade among Aboriginal people. That's why we have the Forks right across the street. So all of that comes together here as the history of Western Canada, going back way before white people showed up. And I want to mention very quickly that this wall is not just a wall. It has representation through drawings and sketches of the history of Western Canada, from the buffalo hunt to the opening of the Northwest Passage as we look to climate warming at the other end. So the wall itself is full of icons that show the development and the history of Western Canada.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We drive by, so many of us drive by it every day, but there's so much to see up close, so make sure you come check it out. And the great opportunity to do that is this weekend with Doors Open Winnipeg.